The letter was taped to my front door, its bold red stamp screaming like a wound. $5,000 fine, property violation. My stomach dropped as I read the words aloud, the ink blurring from the sweat on my palms. Ugly. That's what they had called Sarah's garden. Ugly. I stood frozen, staring at the roses my late wife had planted with trembling hands during her final weeks. They weren't perfect, but to me they were sacred. Every bloom carried her laughter, every thorn her stubbornness. To the HOA, though, they were weeds, clutter, an eyesore that dragged down the neighborhood's value. I could almost hear Sarah's voice, soft but firm, from those long nights in the hospital. Promise me, Marcus, don't let them erase what we built. Let me live on through this garden. Now, 8 months after her funeral, here I was, fined $5,000 for the crime of remembering her. When I called the HOA office, Delilah Thornfield, the president, answered with the kind of cheerfulness that dripped poison. Marcus, she purred, it's nothing personal, but rules are rules. If you can't pay, well, there are buyers interested in your place. Maybe it's time to move on. Move on. Those words sliced deeper than the fine. My wife's ashes rested beneath those roses. This wasn't just a yard. It was her final resting place, our shared history, a legacy that spanned generations. I hung up the phone with shaking hands. Rage boiled in my chest, hotter than grief, sharper than fear. Delilah thought she'd broken me. She thought I'd pay or I'd sell. But she had no idea that by attacking my garden, she had awakened something unstoppable. The first time Sarah showed me the garden, she was barefoot. The evening sun painted her hair gold as she bent down to touch the soil. This isn't just dirt, she said, grinning at me. This is memory. This is family. Her grandmother had planted the first roses decades earlier. Every year since, someone added something new: lavender, ivy, morning glories. When Sarah and I married, she added the fountain, a small stone circle where we used to drink coffee and whisper our dreams. But when cancer came, the garden became something else. Her sanctuary, her battleground. Some nights, when pain stole her sleep, she would sit among the flowers with a blanket, inhaling the lavender like medicine. I'd watch from the kitchen window, helpless, until she called me to sit beside her. Promise me, Marcus, she whispered the night before her last surgery, clutching my hand. When I'm gone, mix my ashes with the soil. Let me grow with the roses. Don't let anyone take this place away. I promised. And after she passed, I did as she asked. I scattered her ashes beneath the roots. Every time I watered those flowers, I felt her there. But Delilah never saw love in the soil. She saw money. She'd been circling ever since Sarah inherited the house from her grandmother, a house Delilah wanted. She'd whispered to neighbors, held late-night meetings, filed violations that made no sense. She smiled at Sarah's funeral and said, "At least now you can start fresh." And now, 8 months later, she had slapped me with a $5,000 fine, calling Sarah's roses ugly. I stared at the brown paper notice, my heart pounding with grief and fury. I didn't know it yet, but Sarah had been right all along. Someone would try to erase her, and I was about to discover just how far Delilah would go to steal the land we both loved. Delilah Thornfield wasn't just a neighbor. She was a predator in pearls. Her smile never reached her eyes, and her rules weren't about order. They were about control. I started hearing whispers from other residents. Eleanor, a widow in her 80s, told me over tea how Delilah fined her for crooked blinds until she couldn't keep up with payments. Then Delilah offered to help her sell the house to one of her shell companies for half the market value. Frank, a veteran down the street, confessed that his utilities were mysteriously shut off 3 times. Delilah had shown up after each outage with brochures for assisted living facilities. It was a pattern. She identified the vulnerable, hit them with citations, drained them with fines, and then swooped in to buy their homes cheap. And now she had set her sights on me. The $5,000 fine wasn't random. It was her opening move. She wanted me desperate, cornered, ready to sell. Her next step was psychological. Neighbors began avoiding me. I overheard someone whisper, "Poor guy. He's talking to his dead wife in the garden." Anonymous notes arrived in my mailbox, warning me that keeping ashes in the soil was a health hazard. It was surgical cruelty, designed to make me doubt myself, designed to isolate me until I had no fight left. But grief has a way of sharpening edges. Instead of breaking me, Delilah's harassment lit a fire inside me. I started writing everything down. Dates, times, conversations. I took photos of every plant, every violation, every smirk she gave me, because I had a feeling Sarah's garden wasn't just sentimental. I had a feeling it was going to be Delilah's undoing. The roses were the first to die. Overnight, their petals curled black, their stems drooped. I knelt in the dirt, my hands trembling as I touched the soil. The smell of chemicals burned my nose. Someone had poisoned them. 2 days later, Sarah's wind chimes disappeared. Cut down, the metal edges jagged where the strings had been sliced. The sound that had carried me through my grief was gone. Stolen. Then came the memorial stone. A smooth river rock Sarah had picked because it reminded her of our honeymoon. I found it knocked over, half buried in mud, as if her memory had been shoved into the dirt. And then the official notice, $5,000 fine, 30 days to comply. I sat in the garden that night, the silence louder than any storm. For a moment I almost gave in. Maybe Delilah was right. Maybe I should sell, escape the humiliation, let her win. But then I remembered Sarah's voice. "Promise me, Marcus. Don't let them erase me." I clenched my fists and made a decision. Delilah could find me. She could poison my roses. She could cut down every wind chime and smash every stone. But she would never erase Sarah. If Delilah wanted war, then war was what she would get. It started with a dusty box. Sarah had hidden it in her grandmother's old dresser. Inside, I found yellowed papers brittle with age, property records, old letters, handwritten notes in Sarah's careful script. "Marcus," one note read, "If you're reading this, Delilah is making her move. The garden isn't just sentimental. Grandma's will protected it for a reason. There are historical plants here, species tied to the town's founding. The land has legal protection. You just need to prove it." It's to Helen Martinez, the city archivist. Her eyes lit up as she scanned the papers. "Do you realize what you have here?" she asked, her voice trembling with excitement. "Your grandmother's garden contains original specimens from the town's founders. Some of these roses were believed extinct." She leaned closer. "This garden might qualify for historical protection. You need to let us inspect it." I felt a surge of hope for the first time in months. Maybe Sarah's promise hadn't been in vain. Maybe this wasn't just a fight for my memories, it was a fight for history itself. But hope is dangerous when predators are watching. The next morning, Delilah showed up at my door, her nails tapping on the frame. "I heard you've been digging through old files," she said sweetly. "Don't waste your time. History doesn't pay the bills." I stared at her, the box of papers clutched in my hands. For the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt power, because Sarah had given me the weapon I needed. And Delilah had no idea how sharp it was. The inspectors arrived on a gray Tuesday morning. Clipboards, cameras, soil testing kits. Delilah paced outside, barking at them about community standards and property values. But when Dr. Elena Rodriguez knelt beside the roses and gasped, I knew something extraordinary had happened. "These specimens are rare," she whispered. "Genetically unique. Some thought extinct for decades. This garden is a living archive." Neighbors began to gather, watching as the city team documented every plant, every stone. Delilah's smile cracked as officials ignored her protests. And then the announcement came. Effective immediately, this property is designated a historic landmark, the lead inspector declared. Estimated value, over $500,000. No HOA may interfere. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Phones clicked with photos. Reporters scribbled notes. Delilah stood frozen, her face drained of color. What she had called ugly was now priceless. What she had fined me for had become untouchable. I looked at Sarah's garden, the lavender swaying gently in the breeze, and felt tears blur my vision. She had been right all along. Love had grown deeper roots than greed could ever are. The news spread faster than wildfire. HOA fines widower $5,000. City declares garden historic landmark worth $500,000. Headlines exploded across social media. Neighbors who had avoided me now knocked on my door with casseroles and apologies. Eleanor hugged me, tears streaming down her face. "You saved us all," she whispered, because with the inspection came exposure. Reporters began digging. They uncovered Delilah's pattern of targeting vulnerable homeowners. 15 families had been pushed out, their homes scooped up by shell companies tied to her. The HOA wasn't just petty, it was criminal. Under pressure, board members resigned one by one. Investigations opened. Subpoenas arrived. Delilah, once the queen of the neighborhood, now found herself cornered. The empire she'd built on fines, fear, and fraud began to crumble. But predators don't go down without thrashing. And Delilah's final act of desperation would be her most dangerous yet. It was 2:47 a.m. when my phone buzzed with an alert. Motion detected in the garden. I rushed to the window and froze. A man in dark clothes crouched among the roses, pouring gasoline. An arsonist. My security cameras recorded everything. Within minutes, police lights painted the street red and blue. Officers tackled the man as he reached for his lighter. Under questioning, he confessed. Delilah had hired him to burn the garden, erase the evidence, destroy the landmark. That was the final straw. She was arrested, charged with attempted arson, fraud, and harassment. Neighbors testified. Victims came forward. Federal investigators stepped in, uncovering the full scope of her crimes. The predator had become prey. And Sarah's garden, the one Delilah had called ugly, stood untouched, swaying proudly under the morning sun. Months later, I stood among the roses, their blossoms brighter than ever. Children laughed nearby, part of a new community program teaching them about heritage plants. Tourists strolled through, snapping photos, their donations funding local schools. The garden wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone. I traced my fingers across the bronze plaque we'd installed at the fountain. It read, "Love preserves all things. Sarah and Marcus, forever." Delilah's empire was gone. Victims received restitution. Laws were passed protecting memorial gardens from HOA interference. And my small corner of soil had become a symbol of resistance against greed. I closed my eyes and breathed in the lavender, the scent of Sarah. I felt her presence in every petal, every root, every whisper of wind through the chimes I had rehung. She had asked me to protect the garden. I had kept my promise. And in doing so, I had discovered something greater than revenge. Love had preserved history, and history would now preserve love. So, that's how the HOA fined me $5,000 for an ugly garden, only for the city to declare it a historic landmark worth $500,000 the very next day. What would you do if someone tried to erase your legacy for profit? How far would you go to protect love, memory, and history? Tell me in the comments. And if this story made you shake your head or fist pump in victory, hit the like button, share it with a friend, and subscribe, because some battles deserve to be told. And that brings our story to an end. If you enjoyed it, give this video a like and share it with your friends. For more incredible stories, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned right here on HOA Stories Live.